Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Marr. I just wanted to talk to you about an assignment that you're going to be doing virtually from home. We're going to start to introduce some Google Drawings features that you can play with at home for design purposes. The first one is using text. We're going to get into typography a little bit over the next few weeks too. But the first one is using one single letter to create a pattern. So when you're done with it, it won't look so much like a letter, and you're not going to be using it to spell a word, but you're going to use it as a shape or an element that you can build on, create repetition, create overlap, think about negative and positive spaces, and whether it's going to be a regular pattern or drop pattern. Um, there's a lot of variables that you'll be able to control, but the bottom line is, in the end, this letter is just going to be used as a shape, not for communication purposes. So I'm going to switch over and we're going to go over some of the very most basic things that you can do in Google Drawings, but also a lot of them translate into the other programs that we're going to be using, all the Adobe programs too. Um, all of the design terms and some of the terms on the computer in the particular program as well, like Control C, Control V, all of that stuff is the same no matter which program we're using. So I'm going to transfer over to the desktop and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to pick the letter that you're going to use. And I already went and found a few different letters that I wanted to show you, not because we're going to use all of them, but because of the fact that I want you to consider some different qualities of individual fonts. Okay, now this font is Impact. What I want you to think about is, number one, is your letter symmetrical or asymmetrical? So for instance, the T, V, W, O are all symmetrical. When you split them down the middle, we talked about this term in your design journals. When you split it down the middle, it's the same on either side. If you use a letter like an R, S, or K, it's asymmetrical. It's not that you can't do it. Just be aware of the fact that that may make a difference in your overall composition. The other thing I want you to do is think about the font that you're using and how the actual letters in that font are developed, because let's Control C, Control V. Whoops, actually, I'm going to go down to the next line. Control V. And if you were to use a different font, first of all, think about the thickness and thinness. But also, let's see, if we go up and we pick a different font, Arial's very thin. They have different qualities to them. There's not as much to choose from here as there are in some other programs. But let's see if we can find one. Let's try Merriweather. Okay. If you look, this T has different thicknesses and thinnesses. If you look at the W, I'm surprised. There should be one that's got more thickness. And here we go, times. Let's go down there. If you look at this font, there's a definite thickness to the V on one side and thinness to the V on the other. It's not that that's good or bad, but it should play into your thinking when you decide what you're going to do. Okay. You can also use a font that's a little more casual, that is, oh, I don't know. Let's try Crafty Girl here. Okay. They give a very different feel, and it's not that one's right or one's wrong. It's just a matter of your choice and what you want to do with it. Okay. So let's say we're going to take, I don't know, let's take something that's very symmetrical. Okay. Control C. I'm going to make that down in another box. Okay. I could just make it from scratch. We'll get rid of that. Here's your instructions. I'm going to pull those off to the side. You should too. And then actually we'll make another text box. Maybe we'll make it bigger. And let's make this nice and big so it's easy to see for what we're doing here. Even bigger than that. Okay. You don't want a lot of extra space around your box. So whatever fits. There's probably going to be a little more at the top, and you're not going to see it. And these lines do not show up. Okay, they can if you put a color on it, we could make them show up. Okay, but in this case, we probably don't want that. So you have some choices. If you copy the letter, Control C is copy, Control V is paste, then you could put a lot of letters in one box, okay? Control V, Control V, Control V, all right? We're not doing that. We want to make each one its own separate shape in its own separate box. So you would want to make sure that you're not copying the letter, you're copying the box the letter's in. Control C, Control V. So it will have its own separate box. One of the tools that I want you to know about is the rotate tool. So you can take that little circle and rotate it as many times as you want. You can make it upside down. You can make it right side up. You can align them, which gets a little tricky when you have a font that has some thicks and some thins, like if I had used that V. You can click on it and move it manually and line it up that way. Or you can use the move tool, but the move tool moves in bigger sections. So we could just line this up, or we can make some more and make like a pinwheel out of them. We could do this. We can arrange, align, and you can control the alignment of all sorts of factors. Okay. I think that just aligned something else for me here. You can control them this way. One of the things I just wanted you to see what some of the different tools do, but you can align it if you want that way. It might get more complicated than you want doing that once you get a bunch of these down here. And what we're going to do, this is when you see that symbol, that's when you know you're moving the whole box. Okay. What I want to do is I want to Control C, Control V. We'll get a couple of these. Okay. And another thing you can think about is the shapes that you can make. Let's spin this one around and I'll show you another possibility. You can create different shapes of negative space. It might have been easier with a V, but let's see what we can do with this one. Okay, so you can create another shape by containing them like that and creating that shape in the center. That's harder for people to read as a T, and ultimately that's what you want to think about. So let's put this aside for the time being, and we can right click and group them, and you can grab them or you can use the arrow keys and just move it out of the way for the time being. Okay, we could take this one, click on the outside there, Control C, Control V. Maybe we're going to spin it to 90 degrees. You could create a shape, negative shapes like that too. Okay. You can decide. That red line is actually aligning it with the one over here, which we don't need to worry about right now. Control C, Control V. We could flip it, create another shape that way. So there's a bunch of different things that you could do. And again, the arrow keys sometimes will help you to align things. we could take this shape over here. It's already grouped. Control C, Control V, move it and incorporate that somehow. Maybe we're going to do that at a 45-degree angle, and you can see that it's coming up there, so we can get a sense of that, and then you'd want to put it in there. And you could make that go all the way around, or you could make it come in so that you get a shape in the center. Control C, Control V. I'm sure that there's a flip tool in there too that we could use. You don't want the cursor. Let's make that come down more like that. Sometimes you can adjust the box a little bit too, get you where you're going. We could make it more, oops, Control Z. I'll make sure it gets complicated. You have to be careful. And I think I took the I took it out of its group. There are all different ways. As we go through this, there are all different ways that you could put these together. Probably would have been easier just to copy it again. Okay. Select the whole thing without any others. So one way to do it is like that, and you can right click. Whoops, it's saying ungroup, even though it's already been kind of ungrouped. And we can take it, move it up to where we want it. Okay. I'm not going to take too much time to play with it, but I think you guys are getting the idea. Okay, and we would do one more of those. Control C, Control V. Sometimes it helps just to get it out of the way, and I'm using the arrow keys now. I just want to nudge it a little bit. It's a little trickier to do in some cases. And we can delete that one. We only want to delete the one. Delete that. All right, now you can group this. Okay. I think it's Control Alt G. We'll group the whole thing. Control C, Control V. Nudge it down with the arrows. Think about your negative spaces as well as your positive spaces. It's kind of creating another triangle, another diamond shape here. Also decide if you want to have the white spaces in between or if you want to butt it right up so it overlaps. Once you do that, get it the way you want it, and it creates, this is a little bit off here. You'd want to make it so that these two do the same thing. It's symmetrical. Once you do that, you can select and you can take your two groups, Control-Alt-G, or right-click and group, and Control-C, Control-V, and use the arrow since it's already selected. And so on. You want to decide if you want sort of a pinwheel here or if you want it to just meet up. Okay, to what degree? Okay, but that's one possible way to do it. There are literally millions of possible ways to do this. You can just work black and white on this one. We're going to get into color in a lot more detail down the road. I think for now, just come up with a basic shape that you like. Think about how you can layer it and put it together so that you get interesting negative spaces. Fine-tune yours more than I did before you start copying it, because you don't want to have to go back and adjust. Once you start getting all of these different boxes, bounding boxes around it, it gets really complicated and you don't want to have to adjust then. So adjust as you go more than I did. Fill your page with the design. This is only one possibility. Even with these shapes, this is only one possibility. You could stagger them. I think I have another one here somewhere. Okay, I did this one with a V. Okay, so you could stagger them so you have a row here and then a row staggered to fit in between them. You could do it so that you line up the fat sides of your V and it creates an X. You can do it so that you line up the skinny sides and they overlap and just sort of hug each other. Or you can take, I don't know if I can't remember where I was in this one. You could take your letters and either make spaces in between them like that, or overlap them to create other sort of diamond shapes in the middle. Okay, so really the sky's the limit. It's up to your imagination. Be consistent. Try and have a regular repetition, but you can vary and put your patterns together in different ways. You know, for instance, the way I did the T 2 different ways and then interlock them. So if you have any questions, let me know. Try this at home. There is a blank for you ready to go. Make sure you use that. Make sure you call it your last name and then pattern using a single letter. So this one I would change to Mar, pattern using a single letter, so that when you hand it in, we will know exactly whose it is, and make sure you hit turn in when you're done. Okay, any questions, you can give me a call. Thanks. Bye now.